Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Dr. Wells' Beat and Ask interview. And today I have another Alvin with me. So there are two Alvins in the house. So Alvin Poh, he founded a web hosting company many years back and eventually built it up and scaled it to a rather successful size and eventually exited with $13 million, right? So thereafter, he traveled around the world and enjoyed the newfound freedom, I guess. Okay, and had some revelation. I read some of your stories, and you're saying that you went to the minimalist kind of lifestyle after you have had a
Totally.
taste of what a rich lifestyle feels like, right? But it's not your cup of tea. And I also read that recently you're more into business mentoring, and you started your coaching program to help other entrepreneurs scale their business, right? So thank you for joining us, and we are honored to have you to share with the people in our audience. And I believe some are entrepreneurs, right? They definitely want to hear from you. Some tips about entrepreneurship, how they can do better, and that includes myself as well, right? Because I run Total Web as a business, and it's always good to hear and learn from other entrepreneurs, right? So thank you for coming.
No, thanks for inviting me. I think this is awesome. Like, this is the first time that we've actually spoke also. So, I've seen your show before, and I've seen like what you've done. So this is awesome.
Okay. Pleasure is ours, right? So don't steal our pleasure. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your entrepreneurship journey. Like, how did you choose to run a business rather than go and work and build a career for other people, right? Why that choice?
Oh man, this is gonna be a long story. So this brings us all the way back to when I was like a kid, right? Like I started Vodien with my co-founder when we were 17 years old. We were in Temasek Poly at that point of time. And well, I don't really come from a very wealthy family. In fact, money was hard to come by. And so as a student back then, if I wanted to hang out with my friends or if I wanted to go out, I needed to find my own pocket money. And so I started looking for part-time jobs, and then I had a hobby back then which was like with computers. And because I was on the computer all the time, I would like play around with software like scripting and programming and stuff. There was this software that we used to chat back then. It was called IRC, and IRC was like a program that you could like script stuff on, and that got me started with programming. So one day after like a few months after that, I realized one of my family friends, or relatives actually, he asked me to help him with a project, like a website for his business. And so I did. And so that was literally the first time I did a project on my own, and I got a token sum for that, right? But it made me realize that, hey, I can actually make money out of this. And so I started doing freelance web design. And this was when I was like 14, 15 years old, right? So that was kind of cool to be able to get paid for that. And so when I was in poly, the very first day, I remember sitting beside my co-founder, and we were like the best of like friends in school. We did everything together, all our school projects, our schoolwork, assignments, everything. So when it came to school holidays, naturally we also wanted to like carry on that working relationship, and we did a bit of part-time work, but then realized, actually we can start a business together. And so I told him that we could do freelance web design. And so Vodien started off as a freelance, or rather a web design studio. And from there we grew, but eventually web design was too demanding on our time and our lifestyle. So then we pivoted and we started looking at web hosting. So we took the plunge, we went in. That was the early days. That was the major pivot that we did from a web design to a web hosting company. And it was so scary because back then as kids, right, as like students, we bought a server, like one physical server, right? And we put all our clients on it. So that was like super scary. That was literally the first time, or the how Vodien got started with just one server. So you can imagine, computers go down all the time, right? Servers are no different also. So a server is just basically an enterprise computer, and 100% of our clients were on the server. So that was super scary. We were like, it was very exciting but very scary because your business could go down just in an instant. So for a few months when we tried to raise revenue, get more clients, get more sales, we were super scared. Like couldn't even sleep properly. And our promise to our customers was always 24/7 super support, right? And since there's only the two of us, both of us had to handle like support. Like we carried our laptops around all the time. And back then, this is like 2002 or so, right? The laptops are not like the MacBook Air or those ultra books that you get these days. It's like I think what 1.52 kilo blocks and you carry it all around. We don't even have like 3G, 4G back then. I think it was still WAP or GPRS. So we would download like emails and we would try to like reply on the spot. And it was a super rough journey. But that was like back then, and that was how we did things. Like everybody did things back then. So thankfully, Vodien grew, and our vision grew as well. At first, we just wanted to survive. We wanted to provide our customers with like the best customer support around, because we were previously, customers of web hosting companies before, and we knew the problems that customers were facing. So when we set up Vodien, one of our promises to our customers was that we were going to provide like super support, the best support that can be. And for thankfully that was what the customers wanted, and so we grew, and that evolved also. So it wasn't just support that we took care of. Eventually expanded into speed, security, and stability also. So these are the four main things that customers all look out for. And so everything that we did in Vodien would cover at least one of these areas. All our projects, all our initiatives, all our investments in the company, all had to cover at least one of these areas. And so that was our vision. And then we grew, and eventually grew to like 2017 when the acquisition happened. Yeah.
Okay. What a story, right? So I will slow you down a little bit, and let's rewind. There were some interesting points that I would like to ask a little bit more about. So the first thing was that you said that you were interested in computers, right, at a very young age. I also remember IRC. I used IRC before. But somehow I just didn't get into programming, right? So what makes you do you like study in school, or is it more like something that you self-learn?
Self-learn. Like my dad got one because he was in sales back then, and so they used to use computers for sales. And I remember IRC was like, I don't know if you remember, but you can actually download stuff on MIRC, like scripts, and the scripts will allow you to change the color, customize the actions, even play songs. And for me, I thought that was kind of cool because I can customize and modify it to how I looked. But I never could find one that was like could encompass everything that I wanted. So you download this, and this will have like some good and bad points. You download another thing, you have some good and bad points. But I wanted one that was like how I wanted it. So I started learning scripting because of that, and because I also needed graphics. I also started learning how to do graphic design, and that's how I started becoming like a self-taught graphic designer also. So I guess everything was self-taught at that point of time. I was a self-taught programmer, self-taught graphics designer. And like because I needed pocket money, I decided to put my skills to use. I'm very thankful my relative got me to start on that first project, because it showed me that it was possible to get people to pay for my services.
So that's interesting, right? Because it started off more like a casual thing that you do on IRC, and then it went on to, I want to customize. I need, it looks interesting, but somehow there's some limitation to what I can use, and then you started to learn because you're forced to do so, right? And one thing led to another, and you started to commercialize it, accidentally as well, right? So, and that builds up the confidence, I guess. Eventually, going to business, it was more like a progressive nature. So, and you also mentioned about the four things that you wanted in Vodien, right? And of course, one of which you emphasized a lot was the customer support, right? So how do you figure out that these four things matter?
So we knew there was support, right at the start because we were customers before, and we had such a hard time getting good support from hosting companies because we were designers, right? And then we had to design and host our website for our clients. And the problem that we faced was that the website always went down, like or sometimes they go down. But the problem is when they go down, you can't reach anyone. So that was the problem that we faced. We couldn't reach someone to help us, or even if we could reach someone, they were not knowledgeable or they didn't know how to solve the problem. And so it was always a very tough position for us. And we told ourselves that if we started a hosting company, that was the first thing that we wanted to fix. We wanted to be there for our customers because we knew how it felt like. So that was why customer support was so important to us, and it became our first pillar. And then eventually we realized, even though you have support, that isn't necessarily like the end all of it. Our vision was to provide the best hosting experience for our customers. And to do that, we needed a lot more. We needed speed, we needed security, we needed stability also. And that's why as we went along and over time, we started focusing on those areas. And every single investment that we made in our company or the team that we hired, they knew about these 4 pillars. And so everything was very specifically designed so that overall customers that come to Vodien back then, they will get a really good hosting experience.
Okay. By the way, we were customers of Vodien as well.
All right. So you guys were happy, man. Like
that was when you were still around, but you left, so we are no longer the customers. Okay. That aside, and you mentioned that Vodien started out as a design company, right? Helping people do up website and things like this. And then eventually you all went to web hosting and you all bought the first server. What made that transition? What caused that transition?
Well, we were looking at it. We wanted to pivot because web design back then for our lifestyle, because we were juggling school and business, was way too intensive. We didn't have the time for meetings because web design was a very high touch point kind of business. You needed to do sales, you need to meet with the client, and then once you have the client, you are working to fulfill their project. You still have to have like constant touch bases. You have revisions also. You have lots of things that you need to manage throughout that whole pipeline. And we felt like we couldn't do a good job of it as while we were in school, juggling the two. And that's why we decided to pivot, and we looked at everything. We looked at our resources, we looked at our strengths, our weaknesses, we looked at the market. And the most logical thing for us back then was our customer base. And we had like a lot of I can't remember the exact number, but we had a lot of web design customers. And so that formed the initial base for us to pivot, because we could bring these customers along and they would pay off or help to pay our initial like costs when we did the pivot. So that was how we did the switch. That was why we did the switch. And then from there we started like focusing solely on web hosting, and we gave up web design.
So it was quite different from the first time you started, right? Because the first time at the beginning, when you got into business, it was more like one thing led to another. But during the pivot, it was very clear that it's through deliberate planning. You say that you figure out what's the strength and what the weaknesses. So would you say this is also part of the maturity of an entrepreneur, that eventually this kind of skill set, this kind of figure out the market, what the market needs, is a very important skill to have?
Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. And I think that's one of the reasons why in my skill engine, there are 5 principles, and we can talk about that later. But one of that is the mindset. Because a lot of times entrepreneurs, we make the mistake of what is good for the customers and what we think is good for the customers. These are 2 very, very different topics. And it is quite common that entrepreneurs actually focus on what they think is good rather than what the customer really needs. And so when you do that, I think that's going to be a big problem. And it happens also to companies who want to scale, because if they don't have that as a foundation, or fundamentally they don't have that, then you don't really have product market fit, which is what I cover in my scale engine. And if you don't have product market fit, then your company will never scale. You always be fighting with the market. You always be fighting to gain a customer, because whatever you're giving or whatever you're doing as a product or as a service is not really in line with what the market wants. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll definitely cover that more later in detail, right? Sounds interesting. And when you sell the business, right, was it an easy decision? Like, oh man, I just gonna do it, or no, what went through your mind?
Well, the thing is, before you can sell a business, one of the things that you need to focus on is systems. Like, you can never sell a business for actually a very good price if you are a one-man show, or if the business depends on you. Like, you can't extricate yourself from the business, then that's going to make it a really hard sell. And that's why I feel that as entrepreneurs, even if you don't want to exit, one of the best things that you can do for your business is to systemize. And that's one of the key things that I think is necessary for scale. So back then when we were, I think it was like 2015 or 2016, there was really a lot of interest in Southeast Asia, and Singapore being like one of the technology hubs and one of the like most modern economies in Southeast Asia was getting the most interest. So we had people coming to us from Europe, from the US, from Japan, New Zealand even. And, you know, there were all kinds. They were, you know, either web hosting people, or they were domain name people, or they were private equity, or, you know, other kinds of funds. And, you know, we had meetings with all these people, but we didn't really feel like we had anything in connection with them. So we never really pursued anything until Dreamscape came along. So Dreamscape was eventually our buyer. And so to give you a bit of a perspective about Dreamscape, they are from Australia. Dreamscape is their holding company, but their operating company in Australia is Crazy Domains. Now, Crazy Domains is the leading company in the leading domain business in Australia. So it was very, very similar background, very, very similar profile to Vodien, because Vodien was like the top in Singapore at that point of time. And both our companies were founder-led. We were not, we didn't have investors. We were not like having like finances in a company, or people dictating what we should do. It was all founder-led. And so that gave us a lot of comfort talking to Dreamscape. And it was a funny story too, because when Dreamscape tried to contact us, the CEO actually messaged me on LinkedIn. But back then I wasn't very active on LinkedIn, so I completely ignored his message. Not by choice, but you know, I just didn't see his message. So I think after a few days he realized that, you know, I'm not active, so he emailed my support desk. And my support desk, the team that we have a Philippines office as well, a team of like, I think at least 80 people over there. They are actually, the office is actually next to Dreamscape's office. So everybody was actually very, very close. Like, most of them know each other. They were either friends or maybe even like worked in the two companies before. So when they saw the CEO's email, they were kind of excited. So they let me know, and I spoke to the CEO, and we started talking. They came down to Singapore for a meeting, and that's when we realized, you know, there's good synergy, and the vision back then, I think, made sense, because we were looking to expand in Southeast Asia, and they were looking at expansion in Southeast Asia as well. So it just made sense, and so we decided to go ahead with the acquisition. I think it was the right people, the right time also. There was a lot of consolidation in the market space also. Back then there was a lot of acquisitions going on. So when Dreamscape came along, it seemed like a good time. Yeah, and that's why we went ahead with it.
Okay, so what I hear is that there was actually you didn't have an intention to build to sell, right? It was more of systemizing and do what's best for the business. But the landscape changed, environment changed, and the opportunity came, and everything fits well. So the decision came easier, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think everybody or every entrepreneur should have that as, you know, their foremost priority. Not because they want to sell their company, but because, you know, it is their responsibility to systemize and scale their business. so that it's no longer a one-man show, so that it's no longer dependent on individuals, and everything is a system and a process. And even though you don't want to sell, it makes the business a well-oiled machine, right? The entrepreneur no longer is working in the business, is working on the business. It's more strategic. He becomes a visionary rather than an operator. And that's why I think scaling with systems is so necessary for entrepreneurs.
Okay. And after the exit, and we know now there are a lot of cloud services. There's by the big tech, right? You have like your AWS, you have your Google Cloud, you have your Azure. So in hindsight, do you think it was a blessing that you got out before the big boys came in?
So like AWS, it started becoming very popular, I think also in about 2014 or 2015. And we knew that they were going to be a competitor. But AWS and Vodien operated on very different like markets though. So the target market that Vodien serves is the small business, anywhere from like 1 man to 15 men. These companies, they do not have in-house IT functionality, or they do not have IT talent. So if they want a website, or if they want to host something, they have to go through either an agency or somebody like Vodien. As of now, they can't go to AWS directly because AWS and any of the other cloud providers are still a bit too complicated for SMBs. And it adds another layer. You're no longer focusing on your core business. You're actually now focusing on like taking care of your website and all that. So that was the role that Vodien played. We provided that management. So the customers that we serve, all that they needed to do was to like get a plan from us, and we'll take care of everything. So that's why we were still quite insulated, I guess, from the effects of AWS, Azure, or any of the other public clouds.
Okay. So yeah, you have a point, because if you just get it from the cloud providers, you probably need a tech guy who knows who knows DevOps, right, to set up all the servers and things like that, so that you can use it. It's not as plug and play where you just get a web host plan from Vodien, for example, that makes it easy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like scaling, right? If you want to scale a business, you want to concentrate on your core functionality, not on something that is secondary or ancillary. These are things that it's like a penny wise, pound foolish kind of analogy. If you want to invest in like IT guys or IT team and help you handle that, whereas it's not even your main function, then you start like losing focus, and you start like not spending the time that you should on your core function, your core business. And so that's why Vodien was always popular, I guess, because we took care of that for our business customers, and they could trust us with that.
Okay, so let's move on to entrepreneurship, all right? And probably you met a lot of entrepreneurs along your journey, and meeting people after you sold the business to help around. What are the common problems you see among the local entrepreneurs?
Oh wow! It actually depends on which stage they are in. So there are the entrepreneurs who have not started and are starting out. They are still trying to figure their way out. And then there are the entrepreneurs who have started and might be around for like a year or two, and they are growing. And then there are the entrepreneurs who have like maybe maxed out their growth potential, and they need to scale. And they've been around for like maybe 3, 4, even 5 years, and they're figuring things out still. And then you have entrepreneurs who have figured things out and are really like scaling already. So it's a whole gamut, and you start seeing like all kinds. There's no one fixed formula for an entrepreneur yet that I've seen. And so everybody has their own problems. These problems, though, I think are common enough such that I came up with that methodology, the 5 principles that affect entrepreneurs and their businesses, 5 steps. So yeah, we can talk about that later. So that goes in depth into everything from like mindset to how they've empowered their team, to the meeting cadence and the communication systems needed in order to scale an organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be a little bit selfish, right? So you're saying that there are different stages, right? So let's say it's similar to my context where we've operated for 6 years, okay?
Yeah.
And what are the common problems you see at this stage of entrepreneurship?
In 6 years, running a company for
Yeah,
6 years.
yeah,
So I don't know your revenue, or I don't know your organization. So I'm just going to make a
general, yeah,
general
yeah.
assumption. So entrepreneurs between, like, I'd say 3 to 6 years, they are in growth stage and they're trying to scale, but they might not necessarily know what it takes to scale. And therefore it is a period of struggle. And I went through that. For me, my journey along those years took, again, like many years, and took a lot of lessons. And I slowly figured things out that worked for my business. And according to my 5 principles, it is either the mindset, the vision, the business model, the team, the customer journey, or the way you execute and the efficiencies that you have as an organization. So these are the 5 principles, and it really depends on how or what problems you're facing right now. But I'd say that businesses that are trying to transit from growth to scale usually face one or more of these 5 areas.
Okay, so might as well we move into these 5 areas in more details, right? So you briefly tell us what the 5 points is. Would you be able to elaborate one by one?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I gave a free webinar a few months ago, and this methodology was still being developed. I came back to Singapore in March. I was traveling, and I told myself that I wanted to travel, and that's why I left for about 2 years to travel the world. During that 2 years, I said that I was gonna just read, write, keep fit, eat healthy, and live well. But I realized that it really didn't give me purpose. And so when March came, I decided to come back. Thankfully, before COVID really like escalated, and I told myself that I wanted to do something more. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to consolidate and crystallize all the knowledge and lessons that I had over those like 20 years of entrepreneurship, and put them into a methodology. And so I did. And the one of the first things that I did was to come out with a free webinar, and I ran that, and it was like 90 minutes long. Got lots of people attending it, and at that point in time, the methodology only had 3 things in it. It was like 3 E's, and I think back then it was vision, envision, empower, and execute. So if you look at it, it's actually, I mean, over time I realized that's not complete. If you look at scaling is like a race, say a horse race, right? If the business is the horse, it is not the full picture. The jockey that is in control of the horse, he plays a part too. And that's why mindset is so important when it comes to scaling. I realized that there is a difference between a 5-6 figure CEO and a 6-7-8 figure CEO. The things that you think about, the mindset that you have, everything is going to be vastly different. For example, if you are in the growth stage, when I was growing my company and I was like struggling to just get enough revenue to survive, what I think about is very different. I think about how I can solve problems, how I can do things, how I can do whatever as a CEO back then. As a 6-7-8 figure CEO, the mindset shifts to how we can do things. You start having to leverage your team, your resources, and everything that you have at your disposal, in your organization in order to scale. If you keep your 5-6 figure CEO mindset, then you become the bottleneck. You realize that everything stops at you, and eventually things will start to break down. So whenever I look at scaling removes bottlenecks. If there's one thing that needs to be done, is identifying and removing bottlenecks. A lot of times the bottlenecks is the CEO, and that's why evolve is like my first pillar of the 5 pillars. It starts with the the business owner, it starts with the entrepreneur. And then you move on.
And you mentioned about mindset, right? So evolve is related to the mindset. And if let's say you identify the mindset is the bottleneck, how do you help an entrepreneur change the mindset? Because it's easy to say, right? But how do you just, like, you cannot just take out the brainwash and then you put it back. It doesn't work that way.
So a lot of times in our lives, right, there is a difference between content and context. So content, I'd say, only forms about 30% of the problems or the solutions that we have to problems, and context actually forms like 70%. That is the reason why, while YouTube is very entertaining, YouTube isn't the best place to really have transformation. And although you can read stuff and you can watch stuff, it is hard to have that mindset shift unless you have a mentor or coach to guide you through that and to tell you that's not ideal, or to tell you're missing out certain things, or to tell you that what you're doing is great, but as a 5-6 figure CEO, if you're wanting to scale, then what you're doing cannot continue. These are the things that are contextual. You have to have somebody that's either been there or done that to tell you, or you make the mistakes. And that's why I think this is one of my favorite sayings, right? In life, in business, or anything that we do, we learn by either making mistakes or having mentors. It's the two M's, right? Mistakes or mentors. And that's the thing that I think is crucial. So yes, no easy way. The mindset shift, you can have guidelines and you can try to recall or to tell yourself that. But a lot of times, that's why having a mentor is so essential for these things. Yeah.
So basically, because a mentor will be able to point out the blind spots, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just impossible that you see your blind spots, right?
Yeah.
By yourself. Okay.
So I made tons of mistakes when I was trying to scale my business. And looking back, if I knew the things I know right now, man, I have saved so much time, so much money, because those were costly mistakes as well. And that's why you either make the mistakes or you have somebody that tells you not to make those mistakes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first one, that's evolve, right? That's related to the mindset. What's the second one?
Envision. So these two are the base pillars, evolve and envision. Envision talks about your vision, your business model. So a lot of times, the product market fit that we talked about just now, that is so crucial in order to have a good business model. Because a business model that makes sense talks about a few things. It talks about what is it that you're selling, who is it that you're selling to, your ideal target, your ideal audience, and how you're going to provide it, your fulfillment process, how you're going to deliver. In our case, hosting, right? We needed like servers, we needed like software. Everybody's business differs. But you got to figure all of that out with like finances as well, like in terms of pricing and costing and all that. So you figure that out, that forms your business model. Sometimes this business model is not sound. That means one of these areas is not sound. You're either focusing on the wrong target audience. Maybe it's too wide, maybe it's too narrow, maybe you're just completely missing the point, and then that affects the product that you sell to them as well. So for example, for us, when we came out with hosting, one of the things that we made a big mistake on was to provide budget hosting. And if you provide budget hosting, we didn't know it at that point in time, but business owners and entrepreneurs and SMBs, they are not going to be comfortable buying budget hosting because, even though it's cheap, they are going to be scared. They are not going to risk their entire business putting it on like a $1 a month hosting. But these are the things that we didn't know back then. And this is just an extreme example, but this is something that can be found in any business. And so if you don't have that kind of product market fit, it's going to affect you when you scale a business, because this is something that is going to be trickling down the road. And that's the business model. The vision is also super important, because the vision of the business is something that only the entrepreneur knows, and it is the role and responsibility of the entrepreneur to have a crystal clear vision and communicate it to his team. The next few pillars and principles will cover that also, but the vision is something that permeates through the organization. Um, at as a student back then, and I was as a young entrepreneur, I was like, I thought that people could read my mind. When I hired people, I thought, if you hire someone and they're coming to a web hosting company, obviously it is for web hosting, right? And you would think that they will know that their job is for web hosting. But there's so much nuances in that. Like, for example, if you hire an F&B guy, wow, if your business is McDonald's versus your business is Morton's, what you require from the F&B guy is going to be completely different. Same thing with hosting, same thing with any other business. And that's why all these nuances must be communicated. What is your vision? How do you see yourself being a different business? How do you see yourself as your business serving your customers? How do you see your values being displayed? Are you all about budget or being cheap? Like you have those like value stores, right? Or are you all about like premium and taking care of every single thing? I guess in like finance and brokerages, you also have that the turnkey and the brokerages that handle everything for you. So these are the things that must be communicated, because if your employees don't know or are not clear, then you're going to have an employee thinking that what they should do is provide a budget experience, whereas they should be providing a premium concierge service, for example. So vision is super important. I think entrepreneurs need to really have a crystal clear vision, not just for the future, but for like the near term, the midterm, and this means, or this translates into the actual KPIs and deliverables that you and your organization will have. Yeah.
Okay,
So that
it sounds like a very big pillar by itself. It's much bigger than the first one, right? It's almost whatever it entails working on the business, right? The product market fit, the visioning, and communicating and make sure that everybody's on the same page and moving in the same direction and not different directions.
well, this is actually it's actually huge. Like
Yeah.
even evolve, right? When we talk about entrepreneurs' mindset, a lot of people think that it is just simply how you think, right? But it is also who is around you, your peers. What kind of talk you have around
Influence.
you, influence, right? What kind of support you have around you? What kind of lifestyle do you have? Are you taking care of your health, your lifestyle, your fitness? Because like my example of the racing horse, you can have the most knowledgeable jockey, but if he is not fit or healthy, he's not going to be able to have the endurance needed to win the race. It's the same thing for a business also. It's no different. Business does require times where you need to actually really put in hours, or you need to actually be crystal clear in your thought process, either to negotiate or to be really sharp in like finding out, thinking about loopholes or product development or anything like that. You as an entrepreneur have the requirement to keep yourself sharp because of all these things. And so, I mean, each of these pillars, they cover so many things. But you're right that Envision is huge, because if you look at a typical business, Envision makes the most sense, I guess, because it covers everything from vision to product market fit to business model.
And I just want to zoom in on the product market fit, right? So we know that as recent years, there are the popular idea of the lean startup. Really test the demand of a product before you really sink in the resources to build it. Do you ascribe to that kind of idea, or how do you help entrepreneurs figure out product market fit?
I think lean validation is definitely something that must be done. If not, you're going to spend too much money, too much effort on something that you think will work, but you have no clue whether the market actually does. And this is even more important when you're doing something that is going to be a bit different. Either you have a very specialized product, or you have an app that is not done yet, or you have an idea that hasn't been tested. So the notion to actually test something, that's so crucial. So I absolutely agree. In scaling up, though, this is something that should have already been done, and we're talking about refinements and zooming in on what is necessary, not what can actually start a business or what can actually grow a business. I definitely agree.
Okay. And how about the third pillar then?
The third pillar is empower. So empower is all about your team. When you're scaling up, the entrepreneur is no longer a solo guy. He's looking at a team. And when you have a team, you need to know how to attract the right people. You need to know how to hire the right people, keep the right people, train them, and grow them. So this is a long process, and a lot of times it's a process that entrepreneurs don't want to spend a lot of time on, because this is the most time consuming and highly variable process. Because of the fact that you're dealing with humans, everything is a variable, and that's why you have to be so clear in what you want to have. You have to be so clear, and again, this is a mindset thing. You have to be intentional on what you want to have. If, for example, you know that you need help with, say, I don't know, like maybe trading or something, and you just think that, okay, I need a good trader, and you put out advertisement, I need a good trader. He needs to know equities and all that. And you just put out ad there and say you pay top dollar, and you put a salary as well. When you do that, number one, sometimes it's not a trader that you want. Sometimes the entrepreneur, all that he wants is actually somebody that does analysis, or very good. I guess the term is analysis, to do either technical analysis or fundamental analysis, and maybe not do or perform trades. If that's the case, then you're actually looking at a completely wrong job scope, or it's too wide, and you need to narrow down on only the components that you want. If that is the case, then it is so much easier finding somebody who is really analytical, or somebody who is highly trainable, so that you can actually train the business's methodology, or the organization's thought process with that guy, and get him to perform what the organization needs. And that's why there's right at the start, the attract or the higher stage needs to be so clear. The candidate, he needs to know your vision as well. He needs to know the values. He needs to know what kind of organization he's joining. These are the things that a lot of entrepreneurs skip over. I can guarantee you, because I've seen it and I've done it before. Most entrepreneurs, they just go to JobStreet or Indeed or whatever and just copy and paste the job description. That is not going to get you the A-star player. If you're going to use somebody else's job description, you're not going to get the kind of people that you're looking for. And so the entrepreneur needs to be really, really clear about this. And if you don't have a HR function, guess what? You are the one that needs to do all these things. You are the one that needs to scale, or you want to think about what is it that you require from your new hire, your new staff, what responsibility. And that's why everything needs to be planned out. And this is just the first part.
Empower is also sounds like something that's so big, right? And it starts from right at the recruitment, not even recruitment, posting the job, right? Thinking of what the requirements are, etc. Then interviewing people, make sure they are right people, and then once they are in, onboard them and train them, and then measure the KPIs and things like that, right?
Absolutely. So even the hiring process, you put the ad there to attract them. When you're trying to hire, what are you looking out for? What will that guy perform? How or what kind of roles and responsibilities will he take on, and how do you test for that? So these are the things that entrepreneurs don't spend enough time on, and I can guarantee you the result. The candidate is going to join the organization. He's going to spend 3 to 6 months there, and after that, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a job fit mismatch, and he's going to leave. And the cycle just repeats, and the entrepreneur will just complain that it's super hard to find the right talent, it's super hard to find the right people, and this goes on and on. I know, because I've been through that before. Sometimes it's not the talent that's the issue. Actually, most of the time, it's not the talent that is the issue. It is what you're looking for. So, So this is something that entrepreneurs need to spend more time on, and this has to be a system.
But they already not have enough time after going through the first pillar, second pillar, and now the third pillar, and we still are not done yet, right? We still have another 2 more.
Yeah.
So what's the fourth one?
So this is a long process. I mean, I took 17 years to grow Vodien, and that amount of knowledge, like the amount of experience, we're just spending like I think barely 20, about half an hour maybe,
About that, about that.
yeah, talking about this. And this is just like scratching the surface because there's so much that's necessary in order for the entrepreneur to scale. And yes, it is not easy. Otherwise, everybody who has scaled already. But people start focusing on the wrong things. People start focusing on sales. And I liken it to an analogy of like a leaky bucket. So if your business is a bucket and sales is the water that's coming in, entrepreneurs, they just focus on more water that come in, right? But if your bucket is leaking water, then you're never gonna scale because you're always gonna struggle because yeah, you get more water in, but more water is gonna go out, and you're just spending more and more time fixing problems, fighting fires. So I rather the entrepreneur just go through the methodology, spend time, take effort into putting the right processes, the right systems into his organization, and really get a solid bucket that doesn't leak. Otherwise, the more sales that you're gonna get, the more problems you're gonna get actually. So yeah, this actually talks about my it's covered in like the other pillar that I have, which is engage, because engage talks about the whole customer journey. Now the customer journey isn't just like one thing. It is a different journey for every kind of customer, and a customer in this case, or in an organization, could be an end customer, it could be a supplier, whatever it is basically a stakeholder that goes through a journey or a process with the company, and you have to plan each stage out. I have a 5-step stage. It starts with discovery. That's where a customer doesn't even know about your company, or maybe doesn't even know about the solution that your company or your business is providing. If that's the case, then you need to be teaching, you need to raise awareness, you need to educate the customer, and then maybe you get them in via an ad or whatever marketing channel you have. When you do that, then they're in the consideration stage. In the consideration stage, that's when they evaluate, right? They think about whether your business is something that will fit them. And that's where you have reviews and rating and testimonials, demos, trials, whatever it is, to get them to try and realize that, okay, maybe this is a good fit. Now, if this is not done well, guess what? Now you have a customer that is aware and not satisfied with you. He or she is just going to jump ship, right? And he's just going to jump into your competitor's customer journey. So you're going to lose a customer like that, and that's why
you help the competitor train the prospect, right?
Yeah, you've already told the customer, you know what? Yeah, you need to invest. Stocks are great. You need to do this and do that. And then after that, they'll just jump to someone else if they realize that your company is not a good fit, or it's not somebody that aligns with them, or something like that. It could be whatever reason. Maybe they sent a pre-sales request or inquiry, and then they got ignored, or maybe they took too long to get a reply. And in the meantime, they're just going to jump. So that's why entrepreneurs should not focus on sales as their first thing. They need to focus on having an organization with systems and processes so that these events don't happen. So, that's just the consideration stage. Then there's conversion, there's fulfillment, and then there's also renewal. So each of these stages all have like action steps that the entrepreneur must plan, must map out, must execute on. So that's the execute. That's the engage pillar. That's another big one in itself. The last is execute. So execute is efficiency, and efficiency is as an organization, right? What you should stop doing, what you should start doing, and what you should keep doing. And I use a funnel called the RSET funnel. First, you analyze what you need to optimize or to go through the funnel. Analyze is the first step. Then you remove, you simplify, you automate, or you delegate. So these are the 5 steps that all business owners must go through, because a lot of times the processes, the tasks that are in the organization, at this point of time, the organization might be 5 years old. The amount of work that is being done on a daily basis is tremendous, and not everything is necessary. So if you have all these like I call it like excess fat, then the organization cannot scale because you're carrying around all these like excess baggage. And so the point is to cut it all out. It really requires a lot of work, and I have a methodology to actually document, process, and consider everything that's necessary, and then you start optimizing on top of that. So these are the things that, man, entrepreneurs must do. And I mean, we've only spent like what, half an hour, but this is just like scratching the surface of like the 5 pillars that
Yeah.
necessary for scale.
Yeah, so definitely that there are a lot of work, right? And entrepreneurs do not have extra hours compared to a normal human being, and they also have families, they also have their own life to take care of, right? So
Exactly.
that's what makes entrepreneurship very tough if they really want to do it properly, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about risk taking, right? It's definitely a lot harder work. Let's go back to the execute. What I hear is it's almost like to always review your processes again, right?
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, I set it up and then now it's sweet already, don't need to touch it.
No.
So I also find that organization, as you grow, you will add more tasks,
Yeah.
but removing them is very unnatural, right? We
Yes.
always have a to-do list, but we don't have a to-stop list.
Yeah.
And so how
Yeah.
often do you suggest that entrepreneurs review their systems?
You don't have to do that all the time because it's really time consuming. And most of the time you'll be shifting from one focus to another focus. So you can even do it like once or twice a year to review processes because it's not something that needs to be done. And that's why execute is like the last thing that I focus on. There are so many more things that need to be considered on a business before before you even look at efficiency. So when you look at process, right, in a company, I think that what is necessary is to have the culture. And when I mean culture, it isn't just like free food or ping pong tables or free beer. Culture really talks about like vision, values, and how you do things. Um, Especially right in terms of work. So in Vodien, back in Vodien, we had the cycle of good work. And this cycle is made out of 3 things. The first thing is that people should always own their work. It is very different if you say, go do something. Let's say a boss tells, a manager tells one of the team members to go do something, right, and assigns the task. There's no ownership. And because there's no ownership, right, there's going to be very, very poor accountability because the person doesn't even feel like he owns the role or the task. He's being like commanded or told to do it. And so there's very, very low efficiency there. But once you have ownership, it becomes a lot better because the person is more committed and more like he owns it. The next step then is to allow them to fail. A lot of times it's new. The role, the task, the responsibility is new. The best thing you can do is to create the support in terms of like training, in terms of like tutorials or a buddy system or whatever it is to support them. But you still must make sure that failure is okay. It's a necessary step to success. And so you can't just say that a company is okay about failing. If you say that you're okay with failing and then after that penalize people, then nobody's going to believe you in the company. So you can't have that. And so that's why really committing to allowing people to fail, that's super necessary. And sometimes the mistakes might be expensive, but if you believe in your company's vision, in the people that you have, and in the future, then that's something that you, as an entrepreneur, you must absolutely do. So that's fail. And then the last step is teach. Once a person has ownership, has gone through failures, and has like really internalized the stuff that he or she is doing, then the last step is to be able to teach. And teaching removes bottlenecks because one of the very, very common things in organizations is the individual that is indispensable. Either the individual doesn't want to hand over his stuff, doesn't want to teach others, or doesn't want to document. That kind of person is not something that an entrepreneur wants to have in his organization. And sometimes it's due to individual personality, sometimes it's the character. Um, and unless your culture is stronger than that, you're never going to make these kind of people change who they are. But if the whole company culture is all about documentation, all about processes, all about teaching, and not teaching because you want to give away your job or to have somebody replace you, it's teaching so that your employee can also take a break. He can go on a holiday during for like 1 or 2 weeks, and during that time, he knows that people can follow the processes that he set up, the guides, the SOPs, whatever it is, and his role can still function. So that's the whole idea. And once you do that, then you can start increasing your efficiency, because you now know what everybody's working on, you now know what they're spending time on, and you can have a vision of like reducing that so that everybody can be more efficient. And that's the kind of culture that we have.
Okay. So where does this culture sits in the pillars? Does it sit in one of the pillars or?
So it stems from it's in Empower, but it stems from Envision, because and that's why it's all interlinked, but it's sequential. It must come from the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur must evolve to be a 5, 6, 7, 8-figure CEO with the right vision, with the right values, and is able to like communicate this throughout his whole team. And
Okay.
like, we can talk about all kinds of stuff also. There's also communication systems, meeting cadence, all kinds of things to enable an organization to run like an well-oiled machine.
Okay. And you mentioned that sequential, which means the entrepreneurs must definitely start in this sequence and these steps, and they cannot skip or start from the last part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you cannot like, a lot of times people just want to improve on the efficiency, right? They want to just like remove things or optimize things or automate things. But if you're automating the wrong things, then it's like saying that you get like Usain Bolt, who's the world's fastest man, right? And you tell him to run, but you're running in the wrong direction. You're not going to win any races that way. That's why he needs to start all the way back from the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur needs to be crystal clear on the strategy, the vision, where the company is going, because he needs to tell that to his team. And once the team is ready and knows what's happening, then you can say, okay, you guys are moving great. I'm going to give you like new racing shoes. I'm going to give you like a better horse. I'm going to give you like better training or whatever. Then they can really win races. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a very big 5-step system that you try to educate the entrepreneurs about, right? So it starts with evolve, then envision, empower, engage, and execute.
Yeah.
I remember, right? Okay, and you also have a mentorship program for entrepreneurs, right? Would you be able to share a little bit how it works?
Well, I go through a strategy call with people first. So I go through a strategy call, I get to know their business, and then I come out with a personalized strategy for these people. It's just 30 minutes. And from there, then you can realize whether or not there's a good fit between us and whether or not there is a problem with the way they are scaling. Because if that is the case, then we can move on to the next thing, which is actual like mentorship. Now, mentorship, like I said, when we do anything in life, not just like entrepreneurship, we either make the mistakes ourselves, which will cost us time, money, or we get a mentor. And in this case, I'm someone who's been there and done that before. And after speaking to so many entrepreneurs, I realized that that's something that can absolutely be done, where I help them throughout the process. And that's why I want to make the differentiation between me and a consultant. I'm not somebody that just goes in and solves or fixes a certain problem. Like whatever I said with the 5 E's, it's a long-term thing. And if you get a consultant, you just fix a certain area, but you don't really fix the issue at hand, which is how to scale. Because the entrepreneur's goal is really to grow the company or actually scale the company to a point where it is systematic, it's systemized, and the entrepreneur can get freedom and profits and not have to be working in the business anymore. That's the ideal goal for any entrepreneur. And to do that is not like a overnight thing or not even like 2 weeks. It has to be a process where all these 5 pillars are considered, starting from the entrepreneur himself. So the mentorship is a long-term thing, and yeah, that
Is
is.
there a timeline? Is it like 1 year, 2 years, or
I
how
definitely think it's at least a year, because these things they don't happen overnight, and that's why it requires a lot of time on my part as well, and that's why I have to be very selective on who I work with also, because it's almost like a marriage, because I am almost like there with them. I'm like a C-level person that's beside them all the way and growing and scaling their business together with the entrepreneur.
in the trenches?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And I suppose there will be a lot of homework for the entrepreneurs to do, right? Because the 5E encompasses so much things, and also depends on the speed of doing all this implementation. Right? If it's slow, then probably the entrepreneurs need more time.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, if the entrepreneur just like save time and money hiring the right person or not hiring the wrong person, he can really save like months of his time. Because if you hire the wrong person, it's going to cause, number one, like conflict. It's going to cause you lots of lost sleep. It's going to cost you opportunity, because your business in that few months will not grow, or might even be dragged down because you get the wrong person who's handling the wrong things. Man, these are just this is just in the empower stage. We're not even talking about the rest of the 5 pillars, and that's why I think this is something that certain entrepreneurs can really benefit from.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I've taken 1 hour of your time, so really appreciate it for explaining the whole process to me, how the system work on the surface. Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess it gives people an idea the span of or the scope of things that an entrepreneur needs to figure out and get it right. If let's say someone is interested in understanding this mentorship more, does he go to alvinpoh.com to get a contact with you?
Yeah, they can absolutely visit my website, or I have a page for the strategy call at alvinpoh.com/strategy. Yeah, I'm also available on social media also, so people can reach
Okay.
out all throughout, like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, so you check your LinkedIn now, right? I suppose.
Yes.
not, not as in the past. Okay. So they can find you in social media or alvinpoh.com/strategy, right?
Yeah.
Strategy. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, fellow Alvin, for
Yeah.
sharing nuggets of wisdom, and hope to meet you in person soon, right?
Yeah.
If you get a chance, if you are not too busy with
Yeah.
mentoring.
Thanks so much, Alvin. Really appreciate it. Like, this is a great
you.
meet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks
All
for
right.
sharing. Thanks for your generosity. All right.
You're
Cheers. See
welcome.
you.